J.J. McCarthy, Chase Brown, and Justin Fields have been named training camp winners so far. We'll tell you if that's right or wrong on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting the way we'd like them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of their customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Yahoo Fantasy. Guys, we've made it. Football is officially back. We have a preseason game on Thursday. We have training camps all across the league going into padded practice this week. Should be a lot of fun, Kate. So let's start by talking about some early training camp winners. And let's start with J.J. McCarthy, who a lot of people have been really impressed by so far. Are you buying or selling the hype?
I'm buying the hype. And the interesting thing is, like, we've also heard some decent stream of compliments coming out about Sam Darnold. Like, he's coming out, he's making faster decisions, I think, than we're seeing from JJ McCarthy at this standpoint, which understandable. JJ McCarthy is a rookie and still adjusting to the speed of the NFL game in a training camp setting. But I gotta say, everything that I'm seeing about JJ McCarthy is completely matching this perception that I had of him. He's throwing lots of touchdowns. He's getting the ball to his receivers. He's been a competent decision maker in red zone drills. Like, everything I'm seeing, I'm just kind of excited about in terms of JJ McCarthy. And I'm looking at the personnel that are going to be on the receiving end of the ball from JJ McCarthy. And I'm kind of all in at this point. Like, who wouldn't be excited about the quarterback throwing to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson when healthy? Even Jalen Nailor's getting hype. Like, come on.
I agree with you. Like, long term. And again, this is a Dynasty podcast, so we're really talking about the
we
long
have to talk long term.
I agree with you. Like, this is a fantastic situation. I actually put out a tweet a couple days ago, Kate. Like, I was asking, is Caleb Williams in the best possible situation for a first-round quarterback to ever walk into? And somebody replied, no, it's JJ McCarthy. And I thought about it, and it's probably right. I mean, you mentioned all the weapons on top of, I think the difference between Chicago and Minnesota is the offensive line. Like, Minnesota has an awesome offensive line with a proven play caller that Chicago doesn't have. So everything is set up for McCarthy to have a lot of success. But in the short term, Kate, I just get the feeling that Sam Darnold's going to start games early this year, because that's been another one thing is Sam Darnold's been very buzzy coming out of training camp. Like, there are a lot of fun throws that he's been making. A lot of the beat reporters and the fans over in Minnesota have been impressed. So I do wonder, as good as JJ McCarthy has looked, I still wonder if Sam Darnold's not going to be the week one starter.
I think that's a very fair assessment, because I also think that, like, the Viking staff, they're looking at this in terms of the long play, which is what we're also trying to do, right? Like, you saw JJ McCarthy excel in these limited opportunities that he had with Michigan, but largely they took the ball out of his hands. He didn't have a ton of moments where he needed to step up, right? But, I think they're trying to ease this transition for him. And, again, taking this experience that he had in Michigan, where he wasn't necessarily the guy that had to carry the team all the time. That's going to be a big transition in the National Football League, especially if you're going to be a top tier quarterback, regardless of personnel. So, like, I don't think the Vikings are feeling all that much pressure and feeling particularly rushed to get him into a starting position if they feel like Sam Darnold is at least pulling his weight.
I also want to talk about his dynasty value right now because he's being drafted as QB 19. And as we were having this discussion and as we were preparing for the show, I'm like, oh, that's an easy buy for me. I think I want to move him up higher. And then you look at some of the names that are being drafted ahead of him, Jared Goff, Drake May, Tua, Brock Purdy. Like, it's hard to move up J.J. McCarthy much, but I just think I want to be aggressive in drafting him and acquiring him at that price. Are you in a similar boat here, Kate?
Yeah, I think all of the names that are being drafted ahead of him, very fair. Jared Goff, Tua. Like Tua, I'm going to be honest, I could go either way on. I know he just got his big deal. He's obviously got a lot of personnel. I'm just still kind of curious about what the fantasy upside is. And maybe that's also the case with JJ McCarthy. I think JJ McCarthy is a little bit more athletic. And we see him utilize that athleticism in a different way. I think from, like a ranking standpoint, QB 19 feels really fair. But what I do think is interesting is for, let's say we're in a super flex setting, right? Where you are starting two quarterbacks and ideally starting two quarterbacks. I think JJ McCarthy is the perfect guy to buy right now as your QB2. If your QB1 is set, but your QB2 is a little bit shaky, I think he's kind of in this perfect range where like he could have some upside here, but you don't have to necessarily invest too much in order to take advantage of that upside.
So what do you believe the ceiling is for JJ McCarthy? Because if you're looking at some of the advanced stats here with us on YouTube right now, everything was at least above average last year. Nothing really stood out other than his third and fourth down passing numbers. But as a player and as like a comp for fantasy, what are we expecting here? Like, could he potentially be, I don't even know. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I mean, I don't think he's going to be that level of quarterback, but like that type of fantasy producer.
I think that feels pretty fair. What about like a Jared Goff, right? Where
With a little bit more athleticism.
a little bit more athleticism, like I think he probably has a little bit more potential to play outside of the pocket a little bit more, maybe get some more scrambling involved. But I think, Jared Goff, anybody would be super happy to have Jared Goff as their QB2. I think JJ McCarthy maybe has a little bit more, ceiling on a weekly basis, but like Jared Goff, pretty safe floor for fantasy managers. I think Jared Goff is probably the kind of comp, and I mean, surprisingly, Jared Goff being drafted one place ahead of JJ McCarthy in the rankings, but like, so yeah, again, maybe that feels fair, but I don't know. You look at Drake May going two spots ahead of JJ McCarthy. I don't necessarily know that I think the ceiling's all that different from these two from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I maybe Drake May has a little bit more rushing upside just because he's quite a bit bigger, but McCarthy was a good runner last year at Michigan when they actually let him run. So I can tell you that this is somebody that I've drafted in a lot of my super flex leagues, not as a QB1 or as a QB2, but as a QB3 that I'm just holding on to because this offense has been so productive with whoever is behind center at quarterback, whether it's Kirk Cousins. Last year, we saw Josh Dobbs put up dumb numbers. We saw Nick Mullins be successful. So I've got to believe that in time, JJ McCarthy is going to put up some pretty big numbers on a very good offense. Kate, I want to talk about a running back that you and I have discussed a lot this offseason, Chase Brown. Let's talk about why he's being considered a training camp winner next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, I love sports. There's nothing more than I love after a long day of sitting on my couch and watching just any sports. That's why I've been loving this Olympics right now. I just get to turn on the TV. There's sports that I didn't even know about, like handball. I've been watching a lot of water polo. It's so much fun. But unfortunately, with the playoffs now done in the NHL and in the NBA, we just have fewer and fewer games to watch. And when the sports aren't sporting the way I like them to, it makes me sad. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So just head over to FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about Cincinnati Bengals running back Chase Brown. I was reading this morning at The Athletic that Chase Brown continues to take the majority of reps at RB with the first team offense. And according to Bengals Director of Player Personnel, Duke Tobin, he said that Brown would have an opportunity to be the guy or second guy or in tandem with Zach Moss, which that doesn't really tell us a lot.
That seems, that's kind of the only range of outcomes, right? Or I guess you could fall down the depth chart further, but yes, you will have the opportunity to be the guy or the second guy or be in mix for guy 1 and guy 2 to both be in play here.
Here's what's interesting to me, Kate. This is what I took away.
That doesn't narrow it down.
Narrow it down too much, but thanks, Duke, for that quote. It's interesting to me that the Bengals aren't pigeonholing him into one position, saying, hey, he is our scat back, our third down back, our electric back, whatever you want to call him. I think the Cowboys used to call those guys web backs, whatever backs. It's ridiculous. But it's interesting to me that they're allowing him to work with the first team because I am of the belief, Kate, that if he can get anywhere near 50% of the workload in the backfield, he's going to be a week in, week out starter in your fantasy leagues.
I'm actually a little bit probably more torn. Maybe it is my love for Zach Moss, but I'm honestly, these reports about Chase Brown, I think in the mix, we're kind of getting lost that there are a lot of reports that Chase Brown and Zach Moss seem like really good complements to each other in the backfield. Now, my big concern is that I worry, and again, this is kind of projection because we don't necessarily know what this offense is going to look like. They had a lot of stability at offensive coordinator, and now we're heading into a new era. But their OC was promoted from within, so I figure let's take a look back at what they've done over the past 2 years, right? Over the past 2 seasons, and this is a team that's been in playoff mix. 27th in total rush attempts, including the regular and postseason. You look at their run play percentage, 30th out of 32 teams, 33.3% run play percentage, well below the league average of 39% in that span. This has been a team that's put an emphasis on the pass. And if we do see something similar to that, and if we do see something similar to a 50-50 split, I worry that both of these running backs are just going to be kind of problematic for the other. If you tell me the split of snaps is going to be 50-50 for Chase Brown and Zach Moss, if we're looking at a similar offense to what we've seen in recent times, that might not amount to much.
The only thing with Chase Brown is if he's playing on every passing down, he's just going to be such a value in PPR leagues because Joe Burrow, not really a scrambler. Joe Burrow will dump the ball off to the running backs. And I think with the vertical receivers that they have in Chase, Higgins, Burton, and even Gesicki as the tight end, maybe that would open up a lot of targets underneath for Chase Brown, but the touchdowns probably wouldn't be there. The work on the ground probably wouldn't be there either to kind of give you that base. But if it is a 50-50 split, I think I want Chase Brown just because of the receptions. If it's a 70-30 split, obviously in favor of Chase Brown, I want Brown. But I think in order for me to be way ahead on Moss, he's going to have to be the guy that's getting consistently 15 to 17 touches on the ground. And I just don't know if we're there yet.
And the question is, are we going to be there for Chase Brown? Because I could picture a world where Zach Moss comes in and maybe Chase Brown dominates the receiving work. But I still think in terms of the short yardage back, in terms of the goal line back, that's going to go to Zach Moss. So like, I think, in terms of these valuable touches, again, I think they kind of cancel each other out. Chase Brown, maybe he's in on the receiving work, but I still think that these valuable touches around the goal line, I think there's probably a reason that we didn't see Chase Brown work into the mix at all, right? Like usually, there's for a workhorse running back that, you're going to see them dominate touches, but you'll see somebody else work into maybe an occasional goal line snap. That wasn't the case for Chase Brown. Like they refused to utilize him anywhere near the goal line. And I do think that was not for nothing. You look at their overall efficacy as runners last year, and Zach Moss, higher missed forced tackle rate, higher yards per carry average, a lower percent stuff rate. I think in general, much higher first down touchdown percentage on those rush attempts that they did get. I just think these two are absolutely trouble for fantasy managers at this point, because one of them is either going to have to run away with the job. And if they don't, I think their skills and where they're going to fit into this offense really just kind of cancels one for one. And that's going to be a big problem for an offense that I'm not projecting to be in the top 15 in terms of total rush attempts this year.
Couple things really quickly. Right now, their price on Dynasty League football, Zach Moss being drafted at RB 39, Chase Brown at RB 42. I would assume that you are taking Moss there still.
I'll probably.
Okay. I'll take Chase Brown just because I want the electric player.
I get wanting to be in on Chase Brown, but you also look at the fact that Chase Brown was already in this offense and they went and decided to pay Zach Moss $8 million.
It's fair. I think they needed to at least have some kind of reliable inside back now that Joe Mixon is gone. But the last point I want to make to you, or I want to ask you a question. Do you play, Kate, in any leagues that offer points for return yardage? Because in every one of my leagues, I make that a case. Like I make it a mandatory thing that
Scott
want. Yeah, well, so the way that we typically have it set up in my leagues is you get 1 point for every 25 return yards. I think that's noteworthy this year because of the new kickoff rules, right? I think you're going to see more returns than ever. Should also point out that Chase Brown was running as the primary kick returner for the Bengals. Now, I think in past years, you would say, oh, if he's the kick returner, that means he's not going to have a big role on offense. I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. I think NFL teams are looking at kickoff returns now as this is a very valuable play where we can gain field position. Let's put some of our most electric and best players on the field to help out there. So I'm just pointing out, if you're in a return league, maybe Chase Brown can give you 2 extra points a week, 3 extra points a week. And that might be the difference for him averaging 9 points a game to 12 points a game. And all of a sudden he's a weekly flex play for you, even if he's a 50-50 runner in this backfield.
I think that's all fair. In terms of looking at the Bengals and who they might want to generate those touches for, Chase Brown makes a lot of sense because he's got the ultimate sort of size speed combination. He is a big back, but he's a fast back. He's electric. He's very explosive. I think that would make a lot of sense. Much more sense over Zach Moss. So like if that's your tiebreaker, I think it's a good one. Yep. Unfortunately, I don't play in any leagues where I get return yards outside of Scott Fishbowl, but
you need to. It's a lot of fun because I
think it's going to be a lot more fun these days than it would in years prior.
So to me, it started like back in 2011, I think is when I started pushing for it because some of my favorite receivers at the time, like Dez Bryant was a punt returner starting with Dallas. Even somebody like your guy, Antonio Brown, right, for the Steelers, started his career as a kick returner. Wes Welker for the Patriots, right? So, like, this is fun ways to get those guys. Randall Cobb was another one in 2012 where you draft these guys that are part-time players on offense that are also getting shots on special teams, and you're able to find some value there. So we'll see on Chase Brown. I'm still really excited. Kate, I want to talk about your Steelers because this is a Steelers show. It's not Locked On Steelers, but it's pretty darn close. Let's talk about Justin Fields and if we can consider him a winner so far in training camp next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you, and save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And get this, you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, we will continue to cover all of the training camp goodness over the next couple of days. We will break down some preseason games that are coming up in the upcoming weeks, so make sure you are tuning in for that. But Kate, I want to give you the floor to talk about Justin Fields, who has been the starter for Pittsburgh over the last couple of days with Russell Wilson out. What are your thoughts here?
Here's the thing. I really like Justin Fields, and I'm a big believer in his total upside for fantasy. There's, not many rushers, cute quarterback rushers that I could think of that I'd want to get the ball in their hands more than Justin Fields. However, I still think we need to pump the brakes. The narratives coming out of camp, people are pretty excited overall for what they've seen from Justin Fields. To be fair, I think the expectations weren't monumentally high. We came into the situation with Mike Tomlin saying very much that this was Russell Wilson's in the pole position. Russell Wilson comes out, has a calf injury. It doesn't sound too severe. He should be back in the mix, I think, on Tuesday for practice. But my biggest thing is that if this were a situation where like Russell Wilson kind of has this minor calf injury and you're in a position where he's truly fighting for his job, I don't think they would have been quite as cautious as they have been to this point. And again, I'm not trying to say anything bad about Justin Fields, but looking at what their skill sets are, what they bring to the table, I'm looking at Justin Fields and I'm saying, okay, what are his flaws as a quarterback? He takes too many sacks. He turns the ball over. Those are pretty big flaws. And you know what the Steelers really, really value intrinsically? They value a lack of turnovers. And that's not a battle that Justin Fields is going to win, I think, at least anytime soon. Like, what am I missing here?
I think people are just excited because Russell Wilson's old and decaying and just a kind of washed up quarterback, right? And Justin Fields is young.
He's not the fun guy. Like, he's not.
Right. Well, there's nothing fun about Russell Wilson's personality either, right? And Justin Fields is young. He's exciting. He's got a huge arm. He's an athlete, and it's been a while since the Steelers have had an athlete at quarterback like this. I'm trying to think who's the last quarterback that's been.
To be fair, they did have old man Michael Vick, so
I will never say anything bad about Michael Vick. So you got me there. I also think this is okay. I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit. Justin Fields is the type of quarterback that should stand out in training camp and does stand out in training camp because He has a huge arm. You saw that play he had, I think it was Van Jefferson down the field, where he just throws a beautiful ball down the sideline. They ran a read option where he took it to the house. But if you're watching closely in some of these clips, Gate, like there's even on the play that he had to Van Jefferson, he probably would have been sacked, right? Because he's holding on to the ball so long. It's why a lot of this stuff that happens in training camp, we can't believe everything that we hear or see, right? Because training camp is not actually football, right? The bullets aren't flying in training camp. These quarterbacks know they can't get hit.
Simulating football,
right.
but yeah, we're not in football here.
Do I think the Steelers are open-minded about Fields potentially winning the job? Sure. Maybe if he's just so much better than Russell Wilson, they have no choice but to give it to him. I believe that. But I think if it's close at all, Russell's going to be the starter. We expect him to be back at practice this week. It just feels like Mike Tomlin really wants to give Russ this job. He told him when he signed that he would be the starting quarterback. He would be in pole position. I think long-term, maybe this training camp is helping Justin Fields earn a shot to be back in 2025, but I think that's all that it is right now.
Yeah, I think, again, this is kind of an opportunity where, kind of like J.J. McCarthy, for instance, who we talked about in segment 1. The team is not rushing J.J. McCarthy along because they want him to have a smooth transition. I think the Steelers, even if they do end up giving Justin Fields the job, I think part of the goal here and part of the goal of having him come into this offense behind a guy like Russell Wilson is that you do give him an opportunity to hit the reset button, pause. Yeah. He was thrown into the fire with the first team, but like the whole goal of this was that, they really wanted to hit the reset button and give Justin Fields a second chance at a life as a starter. And last but not least, I do think we're underestimating here just how safe the Pittsburgh Steelers like to play things. I want us to go back, and this is going to pain me to say, let's go back to the Kenny Pickett days where Kenny Pickett didn't do anything for the offense, right? He was the ultimate game manager. He played it very safe. Sometimes took some sacks that maybe are ill-advised. He would just kind of run into pressure at times. You also had moments where he could have big plays, but they were kind of few and far between. But what Kenny Pickett brought to the offense was game management, right? And a lack of turnover. He played it safe. And the Steelers, I think, approach this mindset with the defense that they have with like, okay, if we can just not turn over the ball in critical situations, that we're going to be in a good spot to win football. And looking at the two, like, okay, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, both of them take too many sacks and put their team in negative positions. But almost no quarterback has been as bad at putting his team in the losing point of a turnover battle than Justin Fields. Like the Steelers don't want to play that brand of football.
I saw a stat, I believe it was from Warren Sharp last year, that 10% of Justin Fields' dropbacks last year were either a sack or interception. Like that's just not Mike Tomlin football, and it's not Steelers football, right? Like I understand the appeal of having a running quarterback on a run-first offense with Arthur Smith, but I think Justin Fields is really going to have to mature as a player before we see him on the field. That's why as much hype as we're getting right now on Justin Fields, I'm not buying that it means he's going to see the field anytime soon. That is it for today's show. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check out the YouTube channel as well. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Maju. Make sure you check her out at yahoofantasy.com. I am at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.